And then these are just recorded through Zoom, they're not recorded or broadcast, okay. All right, calling our second meeting of the Bike Pedestrian Committee to order. Stephanie, would you take attendance, please?
Would you mind? Because I don't know everyone's, or maybe we can go around the room because I don't
Do
know
that.
everyone's name yet. Sorry.
Because also we have a little slightly different mix, so Annie Hopkins present. And we'll just go.
Robin Lori Meyerkoff.
Brian Harper. And Tyler Garza.
Ann Torres.
Bill Lyons.
Stephen Longstaff.
Pat Daly.
Freddie Pedro. Chad Butniak, and Deputy Fire Chief.
Peter Russ, Director of Public Works.
And Eric Eby, Traffic Engineer.
And Stephanie Secord taking the minutes. Thank you all.
That was fast. Okay, wow.
Bye.
All right. Great. So we'll move on to public comments. Not sure if we have any members of the public here.
We have one online.
All right.
I will unmute you, Jerry, if you have a public comment. Or not, that's okay too.
If you're just here to observe, that's fine too. But if you have something to say for any of the items on the agenda or anything that's on your heart, now is the time to say it. Public comment is a one-way thing. The public speaks to us. We do not engage in discourse with the public during public comment, just for an FYI for those that might not hang out in city committees all day.
So Jerry, you can speak, but you need to unmute yourself at your end if you'd like to, or not, that's fine.
Stephanie, you might need to promote Matt onto a panelist.
Oh, yeah. 3 dots.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. No public comment. Moving on to presentations.
And I do have Matt as attending via Zoom for our roll call. Yes, he's
Great. All right.
Okay, thank you.
We have Fleet Street, proposed changes between Congress and Hanover. And Eric will be driving, showing us what's going on for an upcoming project.
So as everyone has seen, we've been downtown over the last few months. Congress Street has been under construction as part of our Fleet Street, Congress Street Utility Reconstruction Project.
second. Matt, can you see that?
No, I still just see the room.
There's
Share button.
in the dots.
More?
Perhaps.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. It's different than this morning. There we go.
Can you see that now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm coming to present the our Fleet Street reconstruction project and potential changes to the traffic flow on Fleet Street. And the section we're talking about is section 1, and I'll get bring it to a map here to show that. Where's this going? There we go. All right, so this is the project area. A lot of work on Congress Street in the last few months. The full extent of the project will be coming down Fleet Street as well as on Hanover and a bit on State Street. So as part of this work, our next phase of the project will be on Fleet Street. And we wanted to, we had several design options that we presented. We've gotten public input from residents and business owners as to what option they would prefer. And the winning choice is really to make the street one-way flow from Congress Street to Hanover Street. And originally it was to the, so how we got to that point, we conducted a web survey of the public back in 21 through 22. And that's how we got the tallies on the votes, the preferred option. We presented the findings to the Parking and Traffic Safety Committee meeting in January of 23. And recommendations were made at that time, but there was no decision made. It was put on hold because it wasn't an immediate priority. But we came back to PTS in May of this year, just a couple months ago. and recommended the section between Congress and Hanover to be made one way from Congress to Hanover with retaining on-street parking. Originally, the thought was maybe we wouldn't have any on-street parking in order to have wider sidewalks. But the committee came up with the recommendation to do the one-way flow from Congress to Hanover with on-street parking. And that was what the highlights of this option: maintain some parking for the high turnover uses at that end of the street with a garage. It does widen the the sidewalk, shortening the pedestrian crossing at the Franklin block at Congress Street. We get a lot of pedestrian activity there, so it'll make a shorter crossing distance. The limited sunlight beyond the Franklin block in the wintertime especially, it lends to staying as parking, because that sidewalk can stay in the shade and get icy and snowy, and it's not a great walking experience. But the sidewalks will get widened even with where they remain narrower to current sidewalk width standards, so that we can maintain them easier, and they'll be brought up to ADA standards with curb ramps. And the proposal was to make a one-way travel lane 18 feet wide. And that 18-foot wide travel lane would allow us to either stripe it as a 18-foot wide travel lane or reduce it to a 12-foot wide travel lane with a 6-foot bicycle lane going the opposite direction. So bicycles would still be allowed to travel in the travel lane with traffic and come against traffic from Hanover to Congress. So it allows for two-way bicycle traffic, but only one-way car traffic. This is a cross-section of what the proposed street would look like. It doesn't have the bike lane in this picture, but what we're proposing, this is looking from Hanover towards Congress. You would have a narrow sidewalk on the Gilley side, but still wider and still meeting minimum standards. Then you would have a one-way travel lane. This shows 18 feet, but that could be restriped to 12 feet with the 6-foot contour bike lane in this area right here. And then a parking lane width of 8 feet against the sidewalk. And this is the Weiler side. That's the overhead view of it here. And this is a plan view of the proposed plan, looking down at it from bird's eye view. This is Congress Street here at the end. Turning onto Fleet Street, this sidewalk here along the Franklin block would be widened substantially. It's very narrow today with sort of a loading zone area, just a no man's land here. So this would be widened out to a nice wide sidewalk. And then we would come back to the existing sidewalk, a slight extension of the sidewalk here, keeping the 2 parking spaces, widening the sidewalk along here, keeping these 5 parking spaces, and then a bump out here at the end. So we're shortening this crosswalk distance here and shortening this crosswalk distance here. And it'll be a 18-foot travel lane, which could be restriped to have a 6-foot wide contraflow bike lane here. So what we would do for bicycles going in this direction, we would paint sharrows on the pavement, showing that they can share the travel lane with cars. And then going the other way, it would be a double yellow stripe line with the bicycle lane markings going in this direction. And in order to accommodate bicycles at the signalized intersection with Congress Street, this is the current signal design plan that we're working on. Because of the changes to the traffic flow at the intersection, we are putting in a new traffic signal. You may see the concrete base, which is in this corner. This is the Franklin block here, Congress Street, Fleet Street, and Hanover Street would be up at the top of the page, but not shown. So already the base is in for this signal. It's going to be one single mast arm with all the signal heads on it. You'll have new pedestrian buttons at each corner, all 4 corners. Read on the ramps, bring everything up to ADA compliance. And so as part of that, if it becomes a contraflow bike lane, we are proposing what's shown here. It's hard to see, but there is a bicycle signal head on the mast arm, which would be just for the bicycles coming this way on Fleet Street. And when that light turns green, all the other traffic stops. The bicycles will be able to either continue on Fleet or take a right turn onto Congress. And the other changes with the pedestrian operation would be, instead of waiting your turn for all traffic to stop, traffic wanting to cross Fleet Street would get the green advance just before, a few seconds before Congress Street gets their green light. So any vehicles going straight and pedestrians crossing would be moving at the same time. Right turning traffic from Congress Street would have to yield to the pedestrians who are crossing Fleet Street. Similar as they do now when the pedestrians are jaywalking. that's another story. So there will be light up signs up here saying traffic turning, yield to the pedestrians. There'll be a blank out sign, a light up sign like further down at Congress and Maplewood that these lights turn on when there's a pedestrian crossing. So the pedestrian gets a 7-second head start, then the vehicles get their green light if we're going straight or right. And when it's a red light for the Congress Street, the sign will flash up saying no turn on red. And that will keep it, because there could be pedestrians crossing at this point with the traffic on Fleet Street moving at the same time. So we don't want traffic coming out here taking a right turn on red when you have pedestrians coming across 2 lanes and then a 3rd lane of traffic. You don't want this right turn lane moving. So these all improvements. The signal is proposed to be installed this fall, and whether or not it's the contra lane bike lane becomes effect, it's a matter of just adding another signal head to the mast arm for the bicycles. So that is the major part of it. So here's the current schedule. So in May, the PTS committee recommended that this option, which I just shown you, which is the one-way traffic flow with on-street parking. We will be going to the city council at their next meeting in July to present basically this same presentation here and why we're recommending the one-way flow, because it allows for wider sidewalks and bicycle accommodations, safer travel. We've done a traffic model that shows the one-way flow will work. Having to redirect the traffic that was coming from Hanover to Congress can be redirected around the block onto Maplewood or Market Street without undue delay. The Congress Street utility work will pick up again after Labor Day, and it will be finished this fall. And at that time, we'll also be putting in the new traffic signal equipment and finalizing everything, the sidewalks and paving. So we'd like to get a definite handle on what we're doing, whether it's going to be one way or city council may prefer to keep it 2-way. And we will get that final determination from them this summer. And so we'd like to have all this done, by the end of next year. Then we would start on section 2 of Fleet Street, which is from Congress down to Court Street. And at that point, no decision has been made on that section of Fleet Street yet. That's still 2-way. But if we want to have one way, that could be a future discussion. But if it was still be one way, it would be the same as this section, because the fire department on Court Street needs to be able to get across town on Fleet Street to Hanover. So it would either remain 2-way or one-way, similar to this section is being proposed. And that's the final slide I have. So I'd be glad to answer any questions you have or take any feedback. Oh, Matt's got his hand.
Go ahead, Matt.
Hello. Thanks for considering this and bringing it up, Eric. I did follow those meetings back in 2021 about Fleet Street. And I think, in terms of navigating the downtown as a bicyclist, the more streets that are one way, the harder it is. So if there's any ability to maintain a 2-way street as 2-way for bikes, I think, bicyclists will do it anyway, as happens on, Penhallow Street and others, because the alternative would be going down to Maplewood to make a couple left turns. Maplewood not having any bike accommodations. So that's kind of why, after discussing with others at Sabre, we recommended considering the contraflow bike lane idea. Part of me wishes that it wasn't an 18-foot driving lane to start with, that we could consider less than 18. But I understand that's the fire department that really wants that for getting out of Court Street. And so given that there will be that much pavement width, I think using some of it for a bike lane is a great idea to visually narrow with the stripe. I'd say my only concern is the parked cars. So the bicyclists in the contraflow lane are, facing, I guess, passengers who could be getting out of parked cars. And they could also be facing parallel parkers, people who have pulled their car into that bike lane to then make that parallel park move. So could you say anything about that, Eric?
Yeah, that's a good point, Matt. Those are concerns I have, because it's not ideal for a contraflow bike lane to be going between traveling vehicles and parked cars like that. So ideally, we'd like to have the parking spaces on the other side. And so that's something we can look into to see if that's possible, to shift the parking to the other side of the roadway. It would, possibly, this bump out here, this widened sidewalk would have to be reduced, but we maybe could make up for it on this other side. We'll have to check how that plays out with the grades and the curb ramps at each corner and the grading. But other than that, I think it's something we may be able to do. So I'll definitely be looking into that further. Because now with Gillies, when this plan was originally proposed, Gillies hadn't made their proposal. And there was a big wide open driveway here, so putting parking over there was not an option. But now they're closing this off with curbing and sidewalk, so you'll have a big stretch of curbing here where possibly we could put the parking if we shifted it from this side to that side of the road. So that's something we can certainly look into and see what the feasibility is. Because that would definitely be a safer option for the bicyclists on that road.
Thank you.
How many parking spots are we talking about?
This proposal has 7 on this side. And if we moved them over to that side, we could get 7 here and maybe 1 more here. But we could definitely make up the 7 on across the street.
Did you say those would be short-term parking or just normal parking spots?
They're the similar regulations as they are now. I believe they're pay and stay, first 3 hours at one rate and additional hours beyond that at a higher rate. But generally, they're more short term.
15-minute spots over there.
No, not on that stretch.
Annie?
You will be presenting at the next city council in July. Will you be presenting the same slide deck that you're presenting now?
Yeah.
So the contraflow is not, it's optional at this, I mean, it's not.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this to the committee, get your guys' feedback on this before we definitely say, okay, we're gonna do this, but I didn't want to, don't make any presumptions.
And what would be the timeline if it's approved by the city council? This is something that will happen next year. It's not part of the Congress Street.
This is the next section. I believe Fleet Street will be starting this fall, the construction on it, so. Yeah, this is something that'll be going in next phase of this project.
Thank you.
Did they just redo the pavement on Fleet Street?
Again?
Did they just redo the pavement or I forget what parking traffic safety when this was presented for the
There's,
timeline?
the timeline would be to get this done in the fall. That's why we're looking for deciding this at this time, so we know whether or not it's one way or we need to keep it 2-way and don't widen these sidewalks.
Okay. Can I add a note on that?
Steven,
So,
yep.
Going from Atlantic Heights to downtown, like the park or the library or anything, this is a key street that I use that's pretty quiet and it's a good way to kind of sneak through downtown traffic as well. So having both options, like contraflow bike lane or a way to get both ways would be key.
Okay.
Add that.
That I use that street a lot as
Yeah.
well.
Mm-hmm. It's good to know.
Bill Tyler, yes.
Go ahead, Tyler.
I was gonna ask, can it be striped, the travel lane, if we're doing this contraflow lane, to 10 feet?
Well, if you make that 10, then you've got the bike lane at what, 8? It's almost gonna look like it's a 2-way street, for cars. We don't want that. We wanna make sure that they know this is just a bike lane and not cars to be traveling in that lane.
Maybe we could do a buffer since the contraflow is just a one-way.
That's a possibility. I mean, I think it's typical striping on this is a double yellow. I mean, there's certain standards you have to, you're supposed to stripe this a certain way according to METCD and NACTO, so. But,
Which
if it's
section
a
do you want,
buffer,
which section do you want 10 feet? Do you want the counterflow bike lane 10 feet or the travel lane?
No,
10 feet?
the travel lane 10 feet.
yeah, well, it should be a double yellow dividing the 2 lines. If it's a buffer is usually in the same direction of traffic, so. But I can look into that, see if that's an option. We just want to make sure people realize it's a bike lane and not another travel lane out there.
Or maybe even flex posts to delineate the bike lane better for most of the summer season.
Yeah. If the parking was to switch to the other side, that could be a possibility, but if we have parking on that side, then they'd have to get through the flex post, so.
Yeah, that would be, isn't that what went wrong with Middle Street and
Among others.
among other things? Yes.
I know people aren't thrilled with flex posts, but it could be an option just to reinforce it during the summertime.
Bill?
I'd like to commend the city for thinking of something that, I don't know, is this the first of these contraflows that you've tried? So thank you for giving that a try. Hopefully it's successful and can be attempted in other areas. I wonder if other folks who are maybe more familiar with the details of the bike pedestrian plan could offer a perspective about how this fits into the bigger picture envisioned in the plan, like the Maplewood connector or middle coming into the city. I mean, is this an important component of a greater future?
That's a great question.
Matt,
I
yeah,
can attempt. I think both bike and pedestrian plans really zeroed in on Maplewood, and in a continuation down Middle Street being kind of the central spine. So, and there was in 2018 a Maplewood Avenue Complete Streets project that's still on our city website that shows buffered bike lanes down Maplewood. So I don't think either bike ped plan really identified Fleet Street as a primary bike route, because I think the consideration was that Maplewood would be that instead.
But once you get into town, it would be handy to have this. It's just the getting into town part that's the challenge.
Right. And a lot of, these are the streets where someone's running a quick errand by bike and stopping in front of some of those businesses. And just the more two-way connections, the better. And the new connection past Gillies will be fantastic. Is that pedestrian only? Do you need to walk a bike if you're going up the hill there?
I don't know what the rules are. Do you know, Peter, about Newbury Way or?
Yeah, I think it's intended to be a pedestrian walkway.
Mhm.
It, it'd be relatively narrow and you'd be potentially conflicting going up a hill, and cyclists, unless it's an e-bike, tend to rock a little bit as they go up a hill.
Yep, that makes sense. But
I know at one time they were proposing stairs there, but I think that came out, right? They changed that.
Yeah, they changed the grade. So they knocked the grade down.
Any other questions or discussion? I'll throw my support for the parking to be moved to the other side, so we're not competing bike lane and parking. And the contraflow, I think, is good, and it might, help the public ease into things like maybe bike barriers, bike lanes, bike traffic signals, even just having a bike traffic signal makes it more visible that we expect and welcome bikes in this town. So I think just even that addition is good publicity, so to speak.
So just to remember, when we go to council, we're not asking them to approve the design or asking them to approve the one way. So it doesn't, just because doesn't show the bike lane, doesn't show the parking on the other side, what we're committing to is making it a one way. So it's not the final design.
Tyler?
How are we pushing this final design that this committee wants then?
You're doing it right now.
I mean,
Giving us input, and Eric said he'd take a look to see if it could work.
And then we'll get a report back perhaps next month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that one.
Great.
It may not be next month, it may be the month after.
Yeah, depending on it.
Depending upon
Schedule.
design priorities.
This morning I almost said, oh, at the next July meeting, it's already July, so whatever. Okay. Thank you, Eric. That was great. All right, and then in this very light agenda, no new business, no old business. And we put the working groups into informational, which is kind of a reoccurring monthly report type thing. So working groups, the police monthly accident report, and any other updates are where we'll go through next. So we'll move on to the working group status updates and report back. We all can do that however we want. Whoever wants to speak for whatever group that they were active in and wants to share, go for it.
We have a report from, I think it was, we called it Bike and Pedestrian Connectivity, and we decided that we'd like to rename it Bike and Pedestrian Connectivity to Multimodal City.
Okay.
To align it with the city council's goal of making Portsmouth a multimodal city. We met Tuesday, and we have great members. We've got Pat here, raise your hand, and Robin, and Tyler, and me, Bill Lyons. And we defined our purpose as helping the committee to make the case for walking and biking, to answer the why invest in the plans, infrastructure, policy, and programs. So we're going up one level. You know, I think we're really interested in supporting the greater vision of the plan. The intent is to help the committee to demonstrate the critical role of walking and biking as a connected component. And I think that word connected is critical for this group, as is multimodal, as a connected component of the future multimodal city envisioned by the council, and to build broad community support on the council, support on the staff for implementing the plan. We have the concept of co-benefits, which are basically a wonky word for the positive impacts of walking and biking. So we want to be able to help the committee to highlight that beyond what is often the start point and the end point of talking about walking and biking improvements, which is safety. So we want to go beyond safety to talk about other priorities that the city has, and to help the committee to make the case that there's an important role for expanding walking and biking for, one, decarbonizing transportation, and that's part of the summary of the mission of this group up on the website, to support the implementation of the city's climate action plan, which identifies 60% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the city is coming from personal vehicles transportation. And that really, to accomplish the council's goal for net zero energy and reducing greenhouse gases, it really has to address vehicles, cars, and to come up with some attractive alternatives. And that should include not only walking and biking to replace trips, but also walking and biking connecting to transit, because then you're reducing a much longer trip, and you're reducing even more trips other than just the trips that can be done walking from home to where you need to go, or biking. To help manage parking, a second priority challenge for the city as it starts to discuss options for building a third garage, and struggles with balancing supply and demand for parking, to encourage substituting car trips for walking, biking, and linking to public transit, to expand affordable housing. Low-income households can spend 30% of household income on the rent or on the mortgage. But once you add the cost of transportation for low-income households, it often goes to 50%. So if there's an interest in making housing affordable, in some cases, $1 spent on a bike facility or on a supporting more frequent coast buses may be $1 well spent for affordable housing.
I just want to replace low income housing with maybe like workforce housing, or including workforce housing, because it's not just low income.
Sure. It's really all housing.
That's probably true.
And the city has a particular challenge, I think, for the affordable housing, but it's really to make everything more affordable. To improve access by workers to low-wage jobs in the hospitality industry. And that's very closely tied to affordable housing, affordable transportation. And then last, to improve access for those with limited mobility and safe routes to schools, encouraging independence of children. And for what the group will do, I think we ended up wanting to focus in on the bike pedestrian plan and where the opportunities are for these positive impacts, as well as other priority plans, policies, and guidelines. So the bike ped plan is the core, but looking at other things like the master plan, or the parking study, or the Market Square vision plan, are I think really critical resources. And then last, as a subgroup, recognizing that the bike pedestrian plan is a plan, and that it was managed and led, and I assume being implemented with a key role for the planning and sustainability office and staff. We really hope that we can have involvement along with our friends from DPW, with staff from the planning and sustainability office.
Wonderful. And I'll just, to your point on low income affordable housing, you know, as I've looked through the childcare lens, your gross annual household income has to be under $73,000 to qualify for low income housing, which is about 80% for a single person, which is about 80% of the area median income. And for a family, 4-person household, it's 104,000. So what we think of as low income, to, you know, look at Bill's numbers and say you're spending 30 to 50%, and, you know, it's really difficult fixed costs that, you know, multimodal transportation has a role to play in. We're not talking like $30,000. We're not talking $50,000. We're talking 73 for one person and 104 for a family. So, you know, it really is everyone. And I think the annual income in Portsmouth is 85,000. So just to frame the numbers around affordability and who can afford to live here, and how we need to really prioritize helping in any way we can, including these great suggestions.
It is affordability that's the key, and it's broadly based and cuts across a lot of different categories of people.
Sure does. Yeah. Thank you. This is really great. Do you want to open it up to any discussion or questions, or Matt? Hello?
Yeah, if we're done talking, were there questions for Bill?
I think.
If not, I was going to talk about the Complete Streets Working Group.
Sounds good.
So, and I think Tyler and Annie may have more to add, but the three of us met. I reserved a room at the senior center, and we had 2 members of the public as well, which was helpful. And so we talked about, you know, about our first bike ped meeting. We talked about how the bike ped committee can be effective in advancing established city goals. We talked about the Complete Streets design guidelines and supporting that joint working group with city staff, PTS, and members of this committee. We also looked at paving projects on the city page, and kudos to Public Works and Planning for having a pretty exhaustive list. We're not always sure that everything is on there, but there's certainly a lot on there, including some completed projects. But just in terms of the simple paving projects, what we found listed were Middle Street, Woodbury Avenue, and Maple Haven neighborhood. And so I think we'll talk about Middle Street a little further down in our agenda, but our working group discussed, you know, especially if the final striping could include bulb outs at crosswalks with flex posts, would be a, you know, a low cost alternative to actually putting curbing out there, similar to what you've discussed at Maplewood and Dennett at PTS. So that was one suggestion that maybe we could talk about later. And the other was Woodbury Ave. I'm aware of all the meetings and the test, what do we call it? A temporary traffic calming effort to put speed bumps on the residential part of Woodbury. And I know that's a big topic, but we zeroed in on the area between Dennett Ave and between Dennett Road and Rockingham, which crosses over the Route 1 bypass and goes under I-95, thinking that this is the area where you have high-speed cars coming off of highways, and you still have a critical connection for people going to Pease, to the bike bridge there, and also going to New Franklin School. So in our first bike ped plan, there was a high priority project on page 79, Woodbury Ave, between Dennett and Rockingham. Restripe existing non-standard bike lane as a buffered bike lane. Long-term upgrade to cycle track with flex posts or more permanent separation. And then in the more recent, last year's bike ped plan, simpler language, it just says convert bike lanes to shared use path on east side, between Rockingham and Dennett. So, I'm also aware, or we're aware of the project, to add a very short path connecting to the bike bridge from Rockingham. And there is a very degraded sidewalk in front of the Anchorage Inn and the Howard Johnson's. So even if it's not in the scope to do something the whole way between Rockingham and Dennett, if it could at least be a shared use path from Rockingham to Franklin Drive. We wanted to ask the Public Works that's doing this, leading up this paving project to consider that. And in the short term, if curbing can't be moved, flex posts in that area. So I think that's what I had from our Complete Streets meeting, but it was a nice group, and I hope we get more discussion there.
Thank you, Matt. Yes, Tyler.
So Annie and I had some additional discussion around what we had talked about. And one of our specific questions was regarding the ordering of projects on the DPW website and more extensive scope, and basically how we can work with you two to understand these projects and when they're coming up so that we can focus time appropriately.
Right now?
I'd love an answer, or I mean, it can be a report.
So there's two types of things that we do. We have maintenance projects. We have like a rebuild type project. The rebuild type project gives you the opportunity, there's more public input, there's like more thoughts, and there's more going into the project. Maintenance are things that you see that get listed as projects we do. Middle Street is a great example of a maintenance project. We are doing some minor adjustments to address some site distances on a couple of intersections. But we understand that there's more, and a suggestion about painted bump outs and things like that, or bulges for the crossings, and potentially putting flex post delineators there. We can look at that. It's relatively low cost, but it will be separate from probably the work that's being done for paving. The paving projects go out as one annual bid, and we identify streets from a pavement management perspective. So we look at the condition of the pavement, and we try to catch roadways that are not degraded to the point where we have to completely rebuild it. So it doesn't lend itself to having a long design process. Roads that we're going to be reconfiguring and spending time, if it's complete rebuild, there's opportunity to have more design input. So you can plug into the CIP, typically calls out the bigger projects separate. So that's the opportunity to speak to those. There's if we're reconfiguring the roadway, there's a public process, but if it's maintenance, we are just for the most part taking advantage of the life of the pavement, trying to extend in a cost-effective manner.
I think we can talk about more about Middle Street in the informational item, but I think we were more curious about the ordering of the projects.
The ordering of the projects? How do we decide what roads we do?
Yeah,
what do you mean?
Like which ones are actually coming up? We see lots of projects on the site.
It's a combination of things, right? You look at the pavement condition index, which we do every year, and it looks at we inventory a quarter of the city every year. So every 4 years, the entire city gets looked at, and we look at volume of traffic, pavement condition, whether there's any opportunity to leverage other funds, if there's utility projects going on, if there's other things. it's our vision of a complete street. In addition to pedestrian things, you want to make sure that the infrastructure below it is taken care of at the same time, so we don't waste monies. So projects can be ranked high in terms of an age of pavement, and a condition of pavement can be really rough. But if the volume of traffic doesn't warrant the investment, we'd rather spend a little bit of money. Middle Street's a great example. If we wait much longer, we'll lose Middle Street and we'll have to do a complete reclaim, which is about 4 times the cost of the project. And so trying to be cost effective. So that's how we prioritize the projects. We also try to address public input that we get. If there's safety concerns, if there's things like that, those go into the kind of the calculus of it. But so that is how it happens in terms of what streets. And in terms of the bigger picture projects, that goes through the CIP. And it's typically driven by sidewalks. People want sidewalks, so that Beverly Hills is a great example. We wanted sidewalk on the road. Well, that led to curbing, that led to a multi-use path. And then all of a sudden it was instead of a relatively inexpensive project, it's a significant project. And so that had the opportunity to have public input and more design approach to it.
So how do we plug into the actual progression of paving projects? I understand there's a report that details the condition of the pavement around the city.
What I would suggest is you prioritize areas, looking at the bike ped master plan. And as you experience your riding around town, if there are specific pinch points or areas of attention that you feel warrant attention, you can bring those to our say these are priorities. And then when projects come up, we will strive to address those.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Are you just asking, how do we know what street's next? What project?
It sounds more like, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, well, that was my question when I met with Tyler, because Middle Street, I didn't know. To me, it's more than paving, because you added, the curb, there were curb changes, there's probably ADA changes for the curb.
Tip down replacements.
Replacements.
So those replacements, they were there, but they were not ADA compliant. So as we do these projects, we're required to make them ADA compliant.
So I'm just gonna take a minute here to kind of clarify the role of what this committee is here to do. I don't know that the intent of all these have been fully brought to light yet, but the intent of this committee is not to micromanage or, armchair quarterback DPW's processes in any way, shape, or form. They're city employees, they're trained staff. The department will run, whether we get to look behind the hood under the hood in every project. We are not going to look under the hood of every project. That is not an appropriate task for an advisory committee to do. The broader part of it, the longer vision goals, kind of like Bill is talking about, taking that higher level approach is where we come in. We're not here to grill Peter on his job and ask Eric, why things are done a certain way and not another way. This has been a long-term, they've both been with the city for decades. And I just want to be sure that whenever we are asking questions and we are searching out information, it is from the place of deep respect for this wealth of institutional knowledge. You may not like it, but we're not here to harass them about how we can make it to our specifications. And if that is ever the intent that comes across, I'm just going to be clear that it's not acceptable to me, and it will be, I will ask you to rephrase. So, yeah. Ready.
Hey, I'm certainly not here to grill by any means or at all, but I didn't really know where to turn. I don't know where I would, when you mentioned no new business, but I've been having people try to take pictures. They've been uploading them. And speaking of Middle Street, because I walk with a cane, it's my mode of transportation. But speaking of Middle Street, I just, there's the amount of trees that just keep hitting me in the head on the sidewalks. And I'm not here to grill by any means. And I just don't know, and it's a little bit more difficult with my site to like upload, and I've called
Sure.
so many times the city, and I'm not trying to complain. I love
no,
this
yeah.
city. I just didn't really know where to turn to trim the
And that's fair. That's a fair question.
and there might be a process to it. I don't know. I just didn't really know, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that was really it. And, between court and this, and yeah, it's not here to vent, complain, or anything, but I tried to have someone take pictures, like I said, to upload, and then no.
Totally.
I'm trying to figure out the process how to just kind of put in a request as to the area that might need that does need trimming. That was it.
Yeah,
That's,
sidewalk obstructions are really challenging for us, especially where people have hedges along their property that grow out into the sidewalk.
Mm.
Going in and kind of trimming them back can be traumatic for the homeowners, especially if they're done in a manner that leaves a, you know, square edge on their round hedges that they've grown to love. So, but if you're not getting, I mean, I'll speak to the arborist about if you're talking about heg bangers. I noticed a section towards Cass, there was some low limbs that really needed to be trimmed back. We have the, you know, by state law, you have the authority to trim over your property. However, tree trimming has to be done in a manner that's healthy for the tree. So oftentimes it requires getting onto people's private property and cutting back
Sure.
the
Okay.
limb in a manner that's appropriate. So we do interact a lot with private property owners, trying to clear the sidewalks and make them safe. And it can be really challenging because people oftentimes don't want us to do that. But I'll bring this, and it's particularly on Middle Street that you're having challenges on?
Yeah, and then Middle Street, then Court, like I live a workforce housing, walking down like from Court, like near Portsmouth, the whole hotel, that whole way there, and then like I mean, I even noticed, like, you know, on the bench at where the bridge is, on those benches, it's all of the you know, bushes are almost enclosing the benches where people would like were to sit down, and but yeah.
and other college members to walk, so you get.
Freddie, do you work with the Access Navigators at all? Do you know that group?
No.
They're very active and
That's Ian Weidman, you know,
Ian
him,
Ann Weidman.
kind of runs that with
good.
things.
Yeah.
But they're great advocates for, you know, for accessibility, and
Sure.
so this, I'm glad, you know,
Yeah.
it's appropriate to, if you're not getting satisfaction by calling, you know, you know, reaching out and chain of command is appropriate.
Sure. No, I appreciate it, man. I love, you know, and I appreciate all the work everyone does for the city. So thank you.
Great. Okay.
And I'm sorry, on that process, from what I understand, can you take a picture of a certain area? That's what someone had said, and I was trying to figure that out.
Like for click and fix?
Yeah.
What you're,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, great.
right? You click and
Yes.
fix and you upload and.
And they
Detail your
respond
requests.
like almost immediately.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a work order system, so it assigns it to the appropriate people. So if it's tree trimming, it would go to our arborist.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. That's what I was trying to figure out how to, thank you.
It's an app on your phone, or you can go online here to the website to submit the requests.
And it's not meant for capital projects, it's meant for maintenance type things. So if you have, if you say like replace entire sidewalk, that'd be a capital request.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe just one quick question to try to help with the dotted line between the more detailed comments that we were getting and the sort of higher level comments. I think it's I would say a positive role for this committee to be thinking in terms of policies and processes. So for example, the Great Fleet Street project that Eric presented has safety benefits. But at the same time, that project may be combined with other future projects will have environmental benefits from mode shifts, could have potentially parking benefits. So I think the question is how do those other benefits from walking and biking be brought into the equation, thereby raising the value of these sorts of projects? And I think it happens in the planning process. And I think that the Bike Pedestrian Master Plan does that really well. So how to connect understanding of health and environment and downtown business and employment and housing to where the city decides to put its priorities, and not just infrastructure priorities, but also a safe routes to school project. I think seems like fair game for this project. It's a little hard to get a grip on, but I think if we don't do that, then we're constantly going to be chasing the need for more walking and biking without a strong defensible position.
That's a great point, Bill. And it is hard. It is a challenge to bring the bigger picture down into the nitty gritty. You know, again, we're not here to say place a crosswalk here or there. We're here to say, yeah, we're
So for
connecting
example, on
with
the
the big policy.
CIP evaluation process, I think there's a criterion that asks for relevance to other Portsmouth plans so that you could get some credit if it came right out of the climate action plan. And the Sustainability Committee has proposed some different projects that have gotten onto the CIP by referencing that. And I think that the bike pedestrian projects reference the bike master plan. I think just being able to strengthen that type of thinking, maybe, and it's hard when you're looking at very specific paving projects and curb projects and crossing projects. It's hard to do that, but you almost have to do that as a grouping of them to think of the positive impact of all of them. And I think that's why our subgroup is so interested in the connectivity, because that's really where you get the impact for replacing longer trips.
Oh, you're definitely right. And we've seen the results from your leadership on Sustainability Committee. So Bill is the guy that knows the path forward with this, because and it's a challenge. It's a thought experiment, kind of stretches our brains.
And on the subgroups, generally, I think anyone that's not signed on to any of the subgroups, the one Matt talked about or ours, and I think those ideally will be complementary as things play out. Please let us know and come join. The more the merrier.
Yes.
I had a question. I emailed the city attorney because we met and we had two members of the public who are not part of this committee. And I was, concerned. I wanted to make sure that this was fine. And also I want to know, do we need to report? Do we need to give official notes or minutes from each working group? So I don't.
Did she respond to you?
No.
I didn't. Yeah, you CC'd me and I didn't see the response either. So that's
Good
still
question.
Yeah, so
out there.
I think the answer is no,
Okay.
because it's a working group. But get it from the legal's mouth instead of me.
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
And will be below the quorum.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, definitely. But it's also okay to have, I asked my neighbors on Bartlett Street if they wanted to join this working group.
sure.
Erica had that question this morning too.
Other people could attend?
No, but if we're inviting members of the public, would we need to notice the public for equitable access?
It's a working group and it doesn't require, you're not, I think if the desire is to make it a formal subcommittee, then, I would say you should make it a formal subcommittee and make it official and have meetings and have minutes and do the whole 9 yards.
Okay, but in this, yeah, if neighbors come along. Okay, and Erica also had the question this morning of the blending of committees and creating a quorum. And I said I would probably be the only one who would count towards two if I went on a site walk or if I did one of these things, as member of both ETS and this committee. I would add to both numbers probably. But also this is such a big committee, quorum is 7, so I think we're pretty safe there. But Erica's point was if we have 3 from PTS and 3 from Bike Ped, is that a quorum? Yeah, I didn't think so either.
Separate committees.
That's what I thought. Okay. And then, we can reach back out, Annie, because we do want to hear it from legal.
And I mean, the beauty is that anything that gets resolved will be presented to the full meeting. It'll be recorded and so it's not like the results are going to be implemented without public discussion.
A quorum is 8.
Oh, is it 8?
correct? No, I'm more asking. It's been presented several ways. Quorum is majority,
It's a majority, I believe.
simple majority.
14. There's 14 because staff don't count. So 8.
If we have 8 people present, that's the
Yes.
RTI.
Right?
And would that be 8 people from this committee? So members of the public come,
They don't
they don't count
count,
toward
no.
that.
Correct.
It's just your committee.
Yep. My bad. I think I keep saying 7. Okay. Anything else on Complete Streets Working Group? Thank you for your work.
Yes, if I could just circle back, I don't mean to harp on it, but is it appropriate for this committee to ask if planning could just let us know on Woodbury Ave, when you intend to pave it, and if you would consider doing any of the things in the bike ped plan?
Where is it in the plan again, Matt? I pulled it up in the updated one. 7.
Let's see, updated plan, page 104,
Short section.
and the original plan, page 79.
Thank you.
So I'm talking about Woodbury between Rockingham and Dennett. But I don't mean to put staff on the spot, if you'd be willing to talk about it at the next meeting.
So I think this design has been presented at Parking, Traffic and Safety a couple times. And we're open to some adjustments to it. The project has been storied, as you know. And I think we have taken into consideration a short section of multi-use at the intersection of Rockingham and Woodbury. So extending that to New Franklin or Franklin Drive, I think is a relatively simple thing. We were trying to stay within our budget, which was $500,000. So Eric, maybe you can speak to the treatments that were previously presented.
Yeah, the previous projects that we presented that were approved, this is going to be a median island here on Woodbury Avenue. And it changes to the sidewalk here.
I'm sorry, but
Oh.
I'm still seeing an image of Hanover to Congress one way, the Fleet Street
sorry.
slide.
Sorry about that, Matt.
Share.
It appears you're looking at something else.
How about that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so I was saying that our proposal was a median island here on Woodbury at Rockingham.
To create a gateway.
Yeah, it would get,
Gateway.
yep, it would narrow this down to one lane with a pedestrian crosswalk, a refuge island in the middle, and a shared path along the section of the north side of Woodbury Ave. The original plan was only to go as far as about to underneath the overpass. And it would be a short connecting here to the rail, not the rail trail, but the path into Pease, where it dumps out into the street now in Rockingham. We would have an off road connector path to this crossing here. So that was the proposal at that intersection. Just, improving the ramps on each intersection crosswalk as well. And then as part of that, we were also proposing down at Dennett, was another median island here, this intersection here. I believe it was at this location here, at this crosswalk, to make a pedestrian refuge island and more of a gateway treatment into this section of Woodbury. You get the traffic coming off the highway and it still comes at high speed down here to that 90-degree bend, and trying to do some things to make them realize they're coming into a residential neighborhood and they should slow down. So that was that. It didn't include anything in front of the inn or the Franklin Drive, but we were limited on scope and budget at that time.
But it doesn't preclude doing that at some point.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, and I also see, new sidewalks for Franklin Ave is a priority. So anything to connect Franklin Ave better to those neighborhoods on, the far side of 95.
Yeah, these sidewalks they're old.
Would there be funding in, would this be a safe routes to schools kind of thing, since New Franklin is right there?
Well, it could be, but that doesn't mean there's funding for it.
It's for the children.
Sure, so you just have to As
Yeah,
you
and I
know,
think that there would certainly need to be a discussion, but maybe we could give up that shoulder bike lane to just have a wider sidewalk. An 8 foot sidewalk, or if we can fit 10 in there, that's a multi-use path.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth looking at, Matt.
Thanks.
And I think, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're kind of saying, how can we bring this forward and make this more actionable? As it's been sitting in this plan for a while. And I think I would look back to Bill's point of like, let's connect the language into CIP, into, all of the different plans and such. And as we bring this forward, taking that higher level view of like, we don't just want a shiny sidewalk. We want it because it means something.
It's that the why.
Yeah, the why.
So it's as much advocacy as technical details. I mean, without the advocacy, you can't get the technical details beyond Eric and Peter's constrained budget and list. You've got to make the case, and the case is there to be made.
Yeah. And if it's a CIP project, maybe that can be on our agenda for our next meeting. We can all spend the next month looking at the bike bed plan and seeing what, and meeting as our working groups, and bring ideas for what this committee can advocate for in that process.
Right, because CIP is coming up. Maybe we could take a similar tack to sustainability.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's some power in partnerships with the different committees. So energy or EDC, for employment, or the housing committee for access to Portsmouth Housing Authority current future projects. I mean, making the case for categories of projects or specific projects, I think is part of helping prioritize through the CIP and otherwise in general, because not everything that this committee is interested in is a CIP proposal.
All right. Any other comments on complete street working group work? Great. Thank you. Community outreach and education group. We did not formally meet. I'm on that group. But Safe Routes to Schools is on there, I think. And I have some projects, again, from Sustainability Committee, looking at a car-free commute challenge of some sort, creating that. And I wanted to loop that into this kind of community outreach and education working group as to getting into the details of that. It ties into Sustainability Committee objectives as well. But again, I think all my groups just nestle right together: parking, biking, walking, and sustainability. So that would be something that I would look to doing. And then when we spoke with with Mike Maloney this morning from police, he talked about the police reports, again, more of the why. And I think what we can pull from the why of why the accident happened is how can we flag that for adult education kind of things. Because he, I'll paraphrase, he said that in the incidents of bike and pedestrian crashes or accidents, it's not the fault of the vehicle or the infrastructure, because they do look for that. Someone wasn't in a crosswalk or someone was doing something they shouldn't be doing. So in the absence of using that report to create infrastructure recommendations, we could also use those reports to create educational and topics for community outreach. But yeah, anyone else on the community outreach and education group want to chime in? Stephen?
I had a bunch of ideas from seeing how other communities kind of interact with kids in school and connecting, point A to point B. I think we can learn a lot from other communities that do that and do things like a bike bus with the kids, get them all together in like a safe, controlled group, wear safety vests at the front and the back, and then get them excited about commuting to school. I did a search on our website of, what those paths are now, and we had a pretty basic map listing a couple routes to each of the schools. I think we can improve on that as well. So I want to add that into the committee for some of the action items there.
Talked about that in our committee as well,
Oh,
so
cool.
that's kind of good that, we're all coming together on some decisions.
Yeah, lots of good ideas there.
Objectives.
I think you had a good idea too of like biking those, like looking at the map and biking them and seeing what they're like.
Yeah, that could be part of our group. We're intersecting some of them if people want to ride those roads or walk some of them as well to get a feel for them, and then we can firsthand see, how we can make improvements there.
I'm just bringing up the graph we had at PTS this morning. This is what the police provide to the Parking and Traffic Safety Committee on a monthly basis.
That's-
Oh, Matt, I'm sorry. So this is we keep a running graph of past 6 years, is it? Yeah. And we separated, these are all accidents up here by month of the year and by month and year. And then we separate out bicycle collisions, different colors for different months, and the pedestrian collisions. So far, it's very good to report that we've just had the one pedestrian collision this year and no bicycle collision so far. So that's good news. And when he does provide this information, we've asked him to provide, the more details behind what's happening. Yep. So we can report on this at each monthly Blue Ribbon meeting as well.
Is there any intel on like e-bikes on that as well? Because I'm seeing that trending upwards for bike collisions. I wonder if e-bikes coming on the market has any play on
Oh,
that.
this year there's been no accidents, so
That's great.
I'd say that trend is in the positive direction this year. So
The police have done a real aggressive outreach for education
Yeah.
and going to the schools, talking to.
Great.
And really going, to the people's houses that they know the kids are, recklessly riding.
Yeah.
So there was a period of time last year, the year before, that there was a number of kids just being really dangerous, zipping around. So they had conversations with them.
yeah, they put out educational pamphlets as well, and they've really done a lot of work on that. It seems to have paid off. We haven't had any of those bike teen gangs here yet. You've seen across the country.
Yeah, the Surons and the e-dirt bikes and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity at the farmer's market, though. I've been talking with Seacoast e-bikes. They're really interested in supporting this committee and supporting outreach and education. And then Mike is also really big on e-bike education. So we could look at a farmer's market booth. Would pull out my sweet cargo e-bike. Be like, look, you don't have to get sweaty when you bike. You can just push the throttle. Okay. Any other comments on community outreach education working group? Okay. We just did police monthly accident report there. Middle Street repaving?
Yes, so that project has started now. You've seen some curb work that's going on at the intersection of Austin and Richards. We're pulling out the curbs a little bit there to make a little bit wider sidewalk and to get the RFB out at a better distance so we can get the sidewalk tractor through there in the wintertime and clear the sidewalks off. Down at Middle and Cass, we're going to create a little bump out, bringing the curb out. So where there's no parking at the curb to help with the sight lines, to keep the cars from parking up too close to Cass Street. And
Union and
that's right.
Union and Middle, because the sidewalk encroaches, it's not really ADA compliant, because it pinches down right next to the edge of the house. And we've had a number of issues with the homeowner having snow issues. That we're looking at bringing that out to better align it. It also gives better sight distance in that section. So they're minor adjustments. But as I said last meeting, there are opportunities on other sections of the roadway that can be implemented once we're done with the pavement. So it's not precluding other things. Like to advocate for.
We will be restriping the bike lanes out there in their current configuration, but it'll be a lot cleaner, a lot neater. Right now, you see the buffer will vary in and out. We're gonna make that a consistent width so that the travel lane for vehicles will be the one that varies. This will make it easier to lay it out, to maintain it, less confusion as to what's, the bike lane will be here, the buffer lane will be there, and then the travel, so it'll be clear where the bike area is and where it's not. Because we've had some encroachment from other projects over the years, but homes get built, sidewalks get expanded or something, and it's kind of snuck into the bike lane, so we'll be reestablishing full width of the bike lanes out there.
I shoveled for that woman for the past 5 years. She says she called City Hall. Yeah, she calls City Hall every. I said, snow melts, it happens.
Yeah.
And that's why we have not put the flex posts out this year on Middle Street. It's because we're getting ready for this repaving project.
Will you be able to add, because I noticed there was some implication of this with the Union one. Will you be able to add bike lane stubs at Richards?
Say that again?
Stump?
Stubs, like happened at the intersection of Miller and Middle.
I'm not sure what you're saying.
Oh, because at Middle and Middle, when we put the signal in, we restriped it and we were able to get the bike lanes on either side of it. So the
Yeah.
bikes have a separate area through the intersection.
Yeah.
It goes from Sharrow marking to bike lane back to Sharrow again, right?
Oh.
So
Yes.
we did it because of the signal. It's in signal. It can create sometimes more confusion than it's worth with the pavement markings, but we could look at that and see if it's worth it. You usually just like to keep a consistent treatment, either all bike lane all the way or all Sharrows all the way. When you start mixing and matching and going back and forth, it can be a little confusing. So it's not the ideal treatment, but if it makes sense, we can do that. Put in a little bike lane stub, but
Thanks.
So I'm just curious, since I've talked to her for unlimited hours, countless hours, like on the brick, like when you widen it out, is it coming to the difference with the house and the sidewalk?
Yeah, we're widening, so it'll be widened out probably 6, 8 feet. So the sidewalk will stay pretty much the same grade. There's a catch basin there.
Oh, okay.
We'll do a curb on that existing curb line to get a grade break, so you can bring it up higher, because the road pitches down into that area now.
Oh, okay.
So it gives us the ability to pull the curb line away from the house, so there's snow storage area, so she doesn't get snowbound.
Nice. I noticed the house next door, it seemed like there was bumpers on the house before. I don't know how that makes sense. I couldn't tell. It should be happy.
All right.
this is the house here.
So it'll narrow the travel lane to 11 feet from its current 13 feet. And so it'll be pretty much where if you look at the telecommunications out, and then it'll line up near that silver car. So it'll because currently it's a weird angle.
Yeah.
So it'll try to line that and make it a straighter line.
I think there's some dashed lines out there.
Yeah, there's dashed lines out there now.
Where it'll be.
Anything else regarding the Middle Street paving?
Yeah, be going for several weeks. So
Great. All right.
and it will be done in phases. The first phase will be up to just beyond Aldridge, and then the second phase will be from Aldridge down to just beyond South Street, ABC driveway, the ABC buildings. Yeah. So that drive, that'll be the second phase of it.
You mentioned last week in our last meeting that sidewalks, the section after where the old gas station used to be and the gas station.
Yeah, we're not doing that as part of this, but it can be done in the future.
The middle. So
Yeah, it takes you from middle up to south, well, up to the Lafayette. playground.
On here.
Yeah, it's just that's all, Rich, keep going.
Oh.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right after that,
Past that.
call it the gas station. I don't even know what's.
Yeah, there's plenty of shoulder there. Going up the other direction. Nope, other direction, that way. See the grass lawn, there's no sidewalk.
Out here.
Yeah. Bringing it sidewalk up that way.
How far does the city's right of way go along that?
The
Corridor, like
urban compact or the,
To the side here, you mean?
Yeah, right there.
No, the poles are in the right of way.
we don't need right away because there's plenty of width, there's a buffer. The
Yeah.
buffer section is pretty wide there. So there's ample room for sidewalk.
Else regarding Middle Street?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Moving on to miscellaneous. Which it was proposed that one of the items that is typically on the agenda that is not on this one is the acceptance of last meeting's minutes. So. we can-
Motion to accept the meeting minutes from June 10th, 2026.
Second.
All in favor or any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, great. We'll have that in the agenda as a standing item. Yeah. Any other things? Heather?
So we had discussion at PTS opening up complete streets reexamination, putting it under the purview of one of our working groups, or it seemed like a new working group.
Yeah, it's in its infancy, so
Are-
nothing's in.
Are we just handling that at a future meeting to build that group up?
I think so, because we just proposed it to PTS this morning and got some volunteers to, look at complete streets in conjunction with this group. So that there is consensus. But I don't think there's really been a formal structure or anything. Erica was kind of asking the same questions, like, what are we doing here? What?
Well, I mean, there's an existing working group.
Here.
You guys have a complete streets working group, correct?
Correct.
So my thought was that that's the group and,
PTS.
the people that are interested in participating from park and traffic safety, get together with you. So.
I think it will be simple. We're not gonna make it more complicated. And then the members of each group would report back to PTS and Bike Pen respectively. So it hasn't really been formed.
Okay.
It's,
I mean, I get the feeling that you think that your complete streets review is different than, or the intent originally was that we were gonna revisit the guidance document and just true it up. There's consistencies and things that staff originally came from staff saying that we thought it needed to be revisited. You had indicated that was unacceptable, and that, I'm fine with the working group taking it on as well. But if there's more, if your scope of what you're looking at is greater than revisiting the complete streets guidance document and that policy, then, you may want to have a different working group for that.
yeah, and we're still awaiting, I think we'll have the legal report back you requested at the next council meeting, I believe.
The report back on,
On,
yeah, that's,
Yeah.
it's been submitted already.
so that'll come up at the July 13th.
Let's just wait until that so that we have something to go on.
Sure.
I think that would be the best way.
We're still in the gathering of
Yeah.
who's involved, what's the scope, what are we talking about here? It's in the little messy creation phase. And you're not the only one asking for clarity, but I don't know that it's not like anyone has a clear thing of this is what we're gonna tell people to do. I think it's getting created as we speak. So we're in the gray. Sorry, gray. No one likes it. Thank you for bringing that up, though. Any other miscellaneous?
Just, you can't finish that early. Can I do one more?
Matt.
Good.
Oh, sure. Before the meeting closes, I just wanted to remind everyone that if you have agenda items for the next meeting, you can send those ideas to Councillor Hopkins, so that everyone can have a little heads up on what might be discussed, with reminders to try to keep it on the big picture, as Bill keeps telling us. And two things that I had brought up for a future agenda would be getting someone from the planning department to give this committee a little bit of an overview on safe routes to school and what has already been done. That'll be interesting for that working group, but also for everybody. And the other piece I suggested was, we appreciate the police crash report, but if there were a way to see a map of locations over the last 10 or 15 years where crashes have happened of various kinds, I think that would be of interest to talk about at a future meeting. Thanks.
Yeah, yes, similar to Matt's point with the planning staff. I think maybe not the same meeting, but a future meeting to talk about the master plan, particularly the corridors and neighborhoods concept and how that fits with walking, biking, and connectivity to transit. Because I know that's an important part of the plan, but I think it would be very useful for us to be thinking about that as well, since it's the 10-year plan for the city, and we need to be thinking not only this year's CIP, but also the 10-year master plan.
All right, we do have a good opportunity to align with that. And I think initially, when things were getting started, I included the slide deck from when UTL presented at sustainability.
Yeah,
because
that was a great presentation.
it was a great presentation, and there are some slides with maps. I'm a visual person, so I always like the maps of what Bill's talking about here, the connectivity of the corridors and little pocket neighborhoods. Like, how can we create more little West End pocket neighborhoods with a grocery store and, all of these different, I forget what you have to be a pocket neighborhood, but if you could walk or bike within your own neighborhood to coffee shop, store, pharmacy, grocery store, well, then we're reducing single use trips, and they identified different little pocket neighborhoods and it's, if you can't find that or don't want to go digging for it, just let me know and I'm happy to reshare that.
I think it would be great if this committee overlaid some of those maps
Yeah,
with features we'd like to add to it or emphasize, because I think all those features are on different maps, but I think part of the problem is that a lot of the planning for transportation, walking, biking, public transit roads is fragmented.
I think you're right. And I wish I had the technical skill to do that. So
Any mapping
mapping.
people would love that. Because I think our committee can play with it a bit, but I'm sure there are people with greater skills.
Could that be a request to planning?
I'd like to take the Google Maps, like
Existing sidewalks and
overlay the neighborhoods
disconnects
that are in the master plan and add the Portsmouth housing
It was presented for
sites. You could do it
Talk to me a little more.
after.
Yeah, I feel like you might have that skill set. Like looking at the maps that maybe are in the bike ped plan and overlaying those into the master plan, kind of connectivity parts of it. I know what Bill's saying, but I don't think you.
It could be at a high level, not a real detailed level. It's like whatever features we think are really important, like the coast routes, the primary corridors that are in the master plan, and the 5 neighborhoods that are in the master plan, just to be able to show that and maybe add current and committed future housing developments.
Yeah, I like that. Because it takes that broader thing of how, yeah, Like
I want to be advocating for positive impacts of walking, biking. That's a really nice visual tool.
Agreed. I see it in my brain. Let's put it on paper.
Or a screen.
Screen. That's fine too. Thank you, Bill. Any other miscellaneous? So we have our next meeting the first Thursday of next month. We have the request for a planning department visitor. Can we put that out there for next? Do we want to put that out there for next month or a later date whenever we've kind of got more ideas or more things? When would we like to request?
I think when there's a topic.
Yeah.
And there may be topics most meetings.
Okay.
It would seem that, sorry to put my 2 cents, in. Somebody from planning would be the person who can see that vision
Right.
of the overlay of bike ped and master plan or speak to it.
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, be familiar with the sort of bigger picture of the bike ped master plan and the master plan.
So our next meeting is the 6th of August.
Great. If nothing else, then I just wait a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So Tyler made the motion to adjourn. I think Ryan seconded it.
Yeah.
If not, Robin, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you all.
School the other day and I counted 7.
Those bike rides.
Take that.
My kids went there a long time
Bye,
ago,
thanks everyone.
Yeah.
Go.
but all those kids need a safer road.